And we need to speaker view, which is you. And we are pinned, I believe. Yep. All.
It's funny because you're always looking at the camera and, you know, you're looking at the computer and it's like, I'm looking at the computer to see the people. Anyway. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing today?
Hello.
Good to see you. Hi, Greta and Chris and Kim and Lori.
Hello.
Hello. Awesome to see you all on this lovely summer day. It's echoing it a little bit. And is there any way I can see them, or do I touch it to see the
Your instrument?
I've got a pencil, yeah.
Awesome. Well, now I can see everybody. We push the button so I can see. Hi, Julia. So we can see the folks that are here today. So welcome, everyone. We're so just thrilled to see you all today and that we can do these classes. We've been doing them for quite a while now, Tom. I'd say since middle of March.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just been really fun, and I'm learning a lot as I go along doing these classes. So thank you guys all for participating. It's great to see everybody here today. My name is Mary Leah, and I'm here at the Rum River Arts Center with Tom Pace. And today our subject is hummingbird. So I thought it would be really fun to paint a little hummingbird, and we'll do it step by step, and you can follow along.
Good idea.
This is being recorded so that if you miss something or you want to go back and review it, you can do that by just watching the recording. So that would be good. And there's also lots of them online that you can go back and see. We did a little dragonfly a couple weeks ago, and that's a kind of a cute one to watch. So anyway, we'll get started here. The supplies that you're going to need for this lesson would be you need a pencil and an eraser and a piece of watercolor paper. The kind that I use is usually Arches, but pretty much you need watercolor. Strathmore is a really good one. 140-pound paper, so you don't want it to be too thin. So about 140 pound, that's a good medium weight. I'm using a round brush, and mine's a Princeton, I think it's a 9, size 9. Yep, nope, it's a 10. And I've got watercolors in tubes, and I have a mixing tray, but you can also use a pan, which is really nice, and I'll show you those supplies in a couple minutes. What else? You need some water to rinse your brush and to use for your painting. Sometimes we paint with water, and we need it to thin the paint down, so to make a nice wash. And I like to have some Kleenex or paper towel close by to dab my brush on and remove some of the excess moisture. So that's something to think about.
You want to move those little paints out and ouch. So they're,
Anybody have a question?
they're easier to access. Just, or maybe you want them right at your shoulder. Oh, you're using those?
I think we're going to have
You're going to have to mute all.
Yeah, so we're going to be, unless you have a question, anybody, before we start, we'll mute you, or you can mute yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Larry, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I was just going to say hi.
Great. Here's Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry, director here at the Rum River Arts Center, welcoming. I know a lot of familiar faces I'm looking here, and if you're new, it's great too. But thanks for participating in our watercolor class. And if you need to, we do have some watercolor supplies. We have some kits that you can buy from us that gets the same palette that Mary Leah uses, and paper and a bunch of other stuff. So enjoy when you're doing it, and keep that art creativity going.
We got to do that. Thank you, Larry. Thanks. Okay, so I think we have our materials ready.
Yeah.
And first of all, we'll start off. I'm going to show you a couple of different photographs of hummingbirds. And I'm also going to show you the colors that I'm going to use today, so you'll be able to get those ready. And let's see, so that's about it. And I need them to come back so I can switch to the camera that looks over my shoulder. But I'll just hold some stuff up. How about that? Because they went out. This is a beautiful photograph that I enlarged of a hummingbird. And can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see that. I think it's such a lovely photograph. And I was trying to learn a little bit about hummingbirds. And I think, again, this is a great picture to look at. Can you switch it so that, so we're going to switch it now so that you're not seeing me. You'll see my hands though. There. Thanks. Okie doke. So now you're looking over my shoulder and you're looking on my paper here that I've done a little bit of color work to show you the colors that we're going to use today. Here's my round brush. It's a Princeton round brush, so you'll need something like that, brush-wise. And then the colors that I'm using today are lemon yellow, so this is lemon yellow. This is a nice pink, and a green, and a blue. So those are the colors we'll use. We might even pop in a little bit of purple, but we can certainly mix the purple by mixing the blue and the magenta, or alizarin crimson would work as well for a color for that. Okay, so we know what colors we're going to use. I want to show you this pan set. Now this is one that Larry got a little dirty, didn't it? It's one that we have here at the Art Center as part of a packet that you can purchase. There's also brushes and paper as well. So it's a nice little set. And I usually dip into that quite a bit. This is the pan that I use. I really like this one because there's a lot of room inside here to mix my colors. And these colors here they're dry right now. And when I want to reuse them, all I have to do is get them a bit wet and I can reuse them. So they're all here for me. All right. So we want to start, I was showing you some pictures of hummingbirds. So I'll show you just a little more. I don't know if that one you can see very well. Probably not, but they're moving towards a very beautiful, I don't know what that kind of flower is called, but they like the tubular shaped flowers, and their long beaks are ready to get the nectar out. And besides having nectar to eat, they also like to eat insects like little mosquitoes and gnats and things like that. All right, so let's see. I think I have one more picture that was really pretty. There's another one for you to see. So there you get a butterfly too hanging on the plant there, and the hummingbird is getting ready to get some nectar. It's kind of pretty to watch. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to draw our hummingbird, and I'm going to walk you through that step by step. The hummingbird is really the smallest of birds, and I had to write it down because I couldn't remember, but a baby hummingbird is about 1 inch long, and when they're grown, they're about 3.5 inches wide, or the body is 3.5 inches, and then the wingspan is about 4.5 inches. It's kind of fun. And their eggs, I was reading, are about the size of a coffee bean. So that's pretty cool. You can learn a lot about hummingbirds. I saw a lot of information at National Geographic and allaboutbirds.org. anyway, it's very interesting. So what I have here is my watercolor paper, and I'm going to move this away. And what I did to help you guys, let's see, is that the right one? Yeah. So what I did was I have my drawing here. I know you can't see it, but my drawing is on the watercolor paper, and that's what you're going to be doing, is drawing lightly with your pencil your hummingbird. And what I'm going to do is I've traced mine onto a piece of tracing paper so that you can see it. So that's what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to move that. I had another sheet of paper. Okay. I'm going to put the paper here so that you can see how to make a hummingbird, or one of the ways to make a hummingbird. Okay, this is one of the little paintings that I did. They're pretty easy to draw. We have to kind of think about the shapes that we see in the hummingbird. And basically, if you just break it down very simply, you know, we have an oval shape here. These are really triangles, aren't they? Now, when we simplify them, you can say, oh yeah, they're triangles. But then we refine them by making the curves on the wings, along the edges of the wings. Circle shape here, and then his beak. So I'm going to trace the one that I drew so that you can see and you can make your hummingbird. Now, when you place it on your watercolor paper, you want to kind of think about where it's going to be so that it'll fit. And this piece of paper here, well, you probably can't see it, but my paper is about 5 by 7, I think. So think about making room for all of it. Think about his wings. Let's just do a little measuring here just for fun. I'll use my brush. So if you measure from the wingspan and then you measure from the bottom, it's kind of interesting that this area here and the bottom of his tail feathers are the same length. So you can kind of mark it on your paper. Does that make sense? And then you can think about that just to make sure that you have room to make your hummingbird. Okay, so I'm just going to start up here at the top and trace it along, and then you'll be able to see what I've done. So I'm making a curve mark here, and then I'm going to skip down here and do some feathers. And maybe you have a picture of a hummingbird you could look at. That would be kind of cool. Just tracing along here. So we're really doing several curved shapes, curved, and then this is curved here. The wings are made up of a curved line like that, and another curved line that's a bit shorter. Okay, and then I'm making, these are actually called scallops along the edge of the wing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just see if you can get it organized. My line's turning a little wiggly, isn't it? The paper that I'm using is rough watercolor paper. It's called cold press, and that means that it has some texture to it. That might be why I'm getting that bumpy line. Okay, and now I'm going to make his little eye. I'm just going to make a circle here. And then I'm going to give him his beak. Now you're not going to be drawing with a marker, okay? You're going to draw with a pencil. But I've done this so that you can see how it's positioned on the watercolor paper, because this piece of tissue paper or tracing paper is the size of my watercolor paper, and it will help you get it positioned in a way that works for you. Okay, so take a few minutes to do that. While you're doing that, I'm going to draw my flowers over here now. You can make some flowers. Really, any kind of flower will work, but I'm just going to kind of draw a little bit here. can kind of keep the flowers very loose. And we can always go back and do these later, so it's not really necessary to get these drawn. One of the things I was reading about, it was sort of fun to read about that, and it was on the Audubon Society website, and they were talking about how to make a garden or your yard friendly for the hummingbirds. So one of the things was to have flowers that are tubular, like honeysuckle and bee balm, and orange and red flowers attract hummingbirds as well. They were also talking about having some little perches around or little places for the hummingbirds to kind of land, and I suppose that would be bushes and things like that. It's kind of fun to think about that. What else? And I was reading that they can fly. I'm talking to you while you're drawing, telling you about hummingbirds a little bit. That they can fly backwards, and I didn't know that. And they can also fly upside down. And like the dragonfly, they can hover. But we know that when they're getting the nectar from the flowers, that they're hovering right there, which is pretty cool. They live about between 3 to 5 years. And let's see, they're known as hummingbirds because of the humming sound that's created by the beating of their wings. I thought that was a very cool thing. So you can learn lots about hummingbirds, and you could even start maybe I don't know, when you see hummingbirds, you can write about it and talk about where you saw them. Most of the hummingbirds here are I think they're called the ruby-throated hummingbirds. There are lots of other ones that are in different parts of the country. So, and they do go away for the winter. They spend the winter in Florida, which maybe that's what a lot of us might want to do someday.
No wonder they only live 3 to 5 years.
And in Central America and Mexico. So they go to Mexico for the winter, and then they come back, and they kind of go back to the places that they're familiar with, and they know where the hummingbird feeders are, maybe. All right, so I'm assuming that most of you have your bird organized on your paper. So we're gonna go ahead and move along here. If you need me to put this back, I could put it up to the side a little bit, and then you can still see it. Where is that? Okay, so this must be my drawing that I did. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start to paint, and I like to have a scrap of paper nearby like this that I can test my colors on. So I've shown you the basic colors we're going to use today, but I want to be able to check it out before I apply the paint to the paper. So that's why I like this. It helps me. So the first place we're going to start, and I know you can't see it yet, but you'll be able to see it soon because I'm going to be putting paint on there. The first place that I'm going to start is his underbelly. In other words, I'm going to work right in here. I'm going to go back to my trace drawing so you can see. I'm going to start right in here, and I'm going to be mixing up a little bit of blue, and then I'm going to gray it up or neutralize it by putting a tiny bit of orange in it. If you don't have orange, you can just mix it with some yellow and a little bit of red and pop a little bit of that in there, and that's going to be a nice way to get a really pretty blue-gray. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to avoid the eye, okay? I'm going to go back and do that later. Some of the things I have to leave them so that they can dry before I go to the next step. The detail work will be done last because I want to work on a dry surface. So with watercolor, we're letting stuff dry, and then we're doing another layer over top of the dried wash, okay? I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to move up here on the back part and his head, and I'm going to let that sort of flow down into the body, okay? I'll do the beak last, and then I'll be going to the wings, and I'm going to do the pink color right here on the throat area of the hummingbird. Okay, so hopefully I do it in the right order. And anyway, okay. So it's fun to experiment with different colors. You don't always have to do the same color. Like this one that I did with mostly blues and yellows and a little bit of green. So you can mix it up and have fun. You could make a rainbow colored hummingbird if you wanted to. It'd be fun. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blue. Here's my palette. I've got my blue here, and I'm using ultramarine blue, which is a nice blue to have. And I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to put a tiny bit of orange in there. Okay, and I do need a little more orange. So now I've got a nice gray. But I want to test it first and see if I like it. It's kind of a purpley. Oh, I'm mixing gray because I'm using the complement. That's giving me the gray. So I can also try it again if I'm not too happy with that particular color. A little bit of yellow in there with it. That's pretty. So the fun thing about watercolor, in my opinion, one of the fun things, is the mixing of the colors. It's, you know, it's always fun to try and see what you're going to get. That's pretty. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to use that color right along here on his underbelly. And I'm not going to get it wet first. I'm just going to paint it. Now, the paint is, if I start right here along the edge, the majority of the paint is on that tip of my brush, so the darker part is right along the edge, because that's where the shadow would be. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now, and I've got a line there. So what I want to do is I want to soften that edge with some clean water. So I'm taking my brush and moving it above the mark that I just made. So I'm softening it away. So I don't want to have a hard edge, but I do want it to be just a tad darker right along this edge here. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to let that dry. Let that dry. And I'm going to move, whoops, I made a mistake. So that's a good thing that I made a mistake, because I can show you what to do. I went too high here because I goofed. Okay, so if you make a mistake like I did, you can just put a little water there and dab it. Okay, so now it's okay. All right, I'm going to move now up into this part of his body on the top, and for that I'm going to mix up my lemon yellow. I'm going to use my lemon yellow, And I'm going to make a wash up here with the lemon yellow. I could get it a little bit damp first, but I think this will be fine. Now, I've used water with the lemon yellow. The water is very important because it helps the paint to go on smoothly and nicely. Okay? It's not a big, huge puddle. If I made a big puddle of paint, let me see if I can make a puddle. It's too much paint because it's all sitting up on top of the paper. If you don't use enough water and you use really, really dry paint, it's just going to be really, really thick and dry. Let's see if I can make that happen. It's just too thick. Okay, so you want to try and get the right amount of water. Now I'm going to get into a little bit of green and start popping in some bits of green into this wash. And it's flowing really nicely into the yellow wash. It's moving because the wash is damp. Okay. Oops. Keep going up. Wrong way on here. Okay. I'm not going to do any details yet, but you can see that's coming along nicely, I think. And I'm going to do his little head. And I'm going to keep it with the same green, but I am avoiding the eye. I'm avoiding the eye. Is that okay, Tom? Oh dear.
No, yeah.
It's a little tricky. Oh, his little head. Well, they are little. They are very little birds. That's for sure. Okay. So, what am I doing? I'm going to go in with my blue and get a little bit of blue happening down here as it's feeding into the green, if you can see that happening. It's very pretty right now. I love how watercolor mixes not only on our palette, but we're letting it and allowing it to mix right on the paper. And that can happen when we have a damp surface. I can also go back in with yellow if I feel like some of it got a little bit lost. I can go back in with more yellow. I don't have to fill in every single part of this. I can leave some parts just white, and that's okay. Sort of creating its own detail here, which is kind of nice. All right. Now I can move over to his throat, or I can go on to do the wings, but I think I'm going to scoot over here and do his throat. Now, make sure you rinse your brush off really well before you do this part. Okay, I'm going to flip it around. I can get to it a little bit better. And I'm going to get it a little bit damp. Using the pink that you might have on the palette, or excuse me, on the, this has a couple nice reds that you can use. And I'm going to use my pink and get right in here. I'm avoiding the green. I can always go back and add more. Okay. If you want to get a little bit darker right at the edge, I've dipped into a little bit of purple to kind of pull that along there and get it a bit darker. Let that dry. And next I'm going to work on these wings. And I think what I'll do is go in with my blue and think about making some brush strokes with the blue and a bit of green mixed into the blue. So it's a little messy, but I'll show you. There's my blue mixed with green. Okay, so that's what I'm going to add to the wings here. I'm just going to start with this one here. I'm going to flip it again. Okay. I'm going to start right here, and because I don't want to get my hand into that because it's wet, so I have to be a little bit careful. And I can start up at the top, or you can start here. It really doesn't matter. And I've got plenty of paint here, and I'm just brushing this across to make the wings, the feathers, I should say. So I'm working from the outer edge and bringing it along here with a brush stroke. And it's totally fine if these touch. In fact, you want to let them touch here. Okay. Let that dry just a little bit. And then we can also move over here and do this other one. I'll go back and add some details later to this. So really it's just a wash, the first application here of the paint. So the more water I use, the lighter the value, and the less water I use, the deeper the value. So water is what we use to change the lights and darks in watercolor. I'm putting a little darker blue in here. So the bottom feathers I would do the same way. And I'm working from here and bringing my marks, my brush strokes down. That's one way to do it. If you want, and it works better for you, you can work from the bottom up. That works too. I'm using different blues here and green. Go back to the throat area and soften a little bit of this and bring some of it down just a bit. So I put a little bit of green here before I get to the beak. And I want this to be completely dry before I try and attempt the beak. So I let the blue and green mix together just a little bit. And I think that works just fine. A little detail work down here on the feathers if I want to. So I'm taking a bit darker green, or excuse me, blue, and doing a little more detail work. This is starting to get dry, so that's okay. And I'm just making some nice lines here. If your brush gets too dry, then just dip it in the water, and you might have to dab it off a little bit with your tissue. I'm just pulling a little more color through here on the wings. Kind of a texture little bird, isn't he? I think we'll have time that I can do another one. I bring a little more blue into the body area here. I'm just dabbing the color in. Let it dry. Okay, before we move on. And so once it's dry, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do his eye, and I'm going to do the beak. Well, I could do a bit of the beak here. Let's do that, and then we can let it dry. So I'm mixing up a dark for the beak. What I'm mixing is, see that, some blue and some green, and I can put a little bit of red with it, and I should get a pretty nice dark. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's quite dark. That will work. You can put more green if it's not dark enough, and a little more red. So keep working it until you get there. We've got it about there. The dark that you want, and I'll test it and show you here. A lot of red in it, doesn't it? Sometimes we have to go back and adjust, just like I'm doing right now. That's working. Okay, so there's my dark. And again, I mixed that with red and blue and green. Okay, so the bottom part of the beak is going to be the darkest. So I'm going to make a mark, a brush stroke, and I'm holding my brush close to the bristles, and I'm anchoring my hand on the paper. So make sure that there's nothing painted there, or you're going to have a big smudge. So I've got my hand down. Now you could put a tissue there too if you want to make sure that you keep everything relatively clean. And I'm bringing, I hope I do this okay, I'm bringing this outward with my brush. And a nice, whoops, a nice round brush should help you with this, that has a good tip to it. When it's wet and it comes to a nice point, you'll be able to draw with it in this manner. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, and I let it bleed in just a little bit into his head here. Okay. Like this, a little more work right in here. Realize that that needs a little more definition there. Things that are white, they really do have color in them. You have to kind of look and see. So I've made this nice gray, but I realized that it was a little bit too light. So I'm strengthening it a bit. I'm sort of shading it, actually, is what I'm doing. That looks a little bit better. Okay. So while that's all drying, I'm going to go over here and do some flowers. And you guys can make any kind of flower that you want to. I was thinking today about orange flowers because hummingbirds are really attracted to orange flowers. And so if you don't have orange, then you just take some lemon yellow and you mix it with a little bit of your pink. And that will give you a very nice peachy color, which is peachy. It's peachy, peachy color. Okay, so I like to do flowers wet and wet. Now these I did not draw on this one, so I'm just gonna have to make them up, I guess. Anyway, I'm just gonna get an area wet here for my flowers. I'm just sort of thinking about flower shapes. And I positioned it over towards the edge of the paper. I can also make some leaves coming down here. Now you can make these up as you go along like I am, or you can draw them first. Totally up to you. Okay, but I'm going to pop in some lemon yellow that's mixed with my pink. I'm just going to pop it right in here. So this is called wet and wet. I've dampened the petals before I've applied the paint. Now you can kind of see them come into life a little bit. Orange. A little more orange happening here. I'm using my brush and the roundness of my brush to help me make the petals. And I can always take some water and soften the edge and let them blend. And when you do that, it creates value. I know I said that earlier. That just means I'm making lights and darks. I think he likes this little orange flower. Okay. So I'm getting a little bit more pink here. Adding that in. I'm going to let it dry a little bit before I do the center of the flower. While that's drying, I'm going to do some leaves. And you saw that I dampened them first. So you can do leaves lots of different ways. Whoops. I like to mix my yellow in with the green so I get a nice spring green. Another way to do it would be to put a little bit of yellow first. There's yellow. Can you see that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you can go in with green around inside it, and that gives you a nice leaf as well. So there's one idea. Okay. Another idea would be, let's see if we got leaf right over here. Kind of cascading down. So that's the yellow mixed with the green. You can also just paint with water, clean water, and then put the color right into that clean water, and you get a really, really pretty effect. Okay. All right, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I do need to go back and do the center of the flower, which would be probably pretty with pink, I think. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and create this little center for my flower. Sometimes I do the centers first. Other times you could do the center later. get it a little bit stronger in color. I'm adding some little dots of color here to give it some texture. There. That's kind of a quick little flower. That'll work. So let's go back, and I'm going to work on the feathers a little bit more, and then I think we have time to do another bird. Oh, we've got 15 minutes, so I think we might have time if I do it quickly. Okay, so I'm going to do his little feet. I think the strongest part of the hummingbird is the wings. His feet are not so strong, apparently. And those are just two curved lines that I made here. Okay, two curved lines. Okay. I'm also thinking, this is dry, I can take a little bit, the same color that I did here for his legs, and I can take that color or a deeper version of the, you can use your blue, that would work too. And I'm going to make some marks along here. I'll show you with some practice marks that I can make. So I can use the very tip of my brush to, let me see right here, make some little marks. I'm really just drawing with my brush. Okay, so there's some little marks that are detail, and we can add those over top of this area here that I've just painted, as long as it's dry. So I'm making just a little textural marks here, and they're not going to be all the same length, just a little there. Okay. Whoops. Good thing I have 2 buckets of water here. That's a good thing. Okay. So I'm going to go back into his wings and just add a little bit more detail here. I'm going to go down here, the bottom wings. And again, I'm really just drawing with my brush to make some marks. So your color would have to, that you use will have to be darker in order for it to show up, right? What do you think, Tom? Are we doing okay?
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay, so I'm really just bringing my brush lightly across to add detail work to those wings on the bottom. Do the same thing here. Okay. These are fun to do, so it's coming along. And you know, the wings are moving, so they're a little fuzzy, which is okay, a little bit fuzzy. This wing here on the top is behind, actually it's behind his body, so it would be a little darker right here. Create a bit of a shadow. And do the same thing here. And I used a bit of green. And you can also go back into this one and pull some green across as well. It's kind of nice. It's kind of a brightly colored hummingbird. I don't want to forget about those eyes, so we need to do that. So the eyes, it's a little bit tricky. I'm going to go with my dark that I mixed up. Remember, I mixed green and red and some blue together to get a nice dark. And I'm going to check it again. Probably not quite dark enough. Okay, so on the eyes, they're going to have a little bit of a, let me see if I can show you this so you can see. There's my little eye that I drew. And it's going to, I'll make another one right here so you can see it. Here's an eye. And you're going to leave a little bit of light inside here. I'll make it even bigger. There's a pretend eye. It's pretty big. But I'm going to leave a little highlight and color in the rest, paint in the rest. That's the highlight, and we want to save that white when you paint the eye. Okay? So it's a little tricky because you have to either draw it on your paper. It's very small, so it'd be hard to draw it. Or just intentionally leave that dark, or excuse me, leave that empty spot. So you want to have enough paint on your brush to get around there. Again, I've got my hand anchored. And I'm going to leave an empty spot up at the top in the circle for the eye. Okay. Good thing I have my glasses on, or I would really not do a very good job on this. Okay. It's okay. All right. So a little light, and that just means leave it empty. Now you can go in a little bit after that dries and work your way around it a little bit more, but I would wait until it dries before you do that. Okay. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go in here and make some marks that are like little curved marks, little half circles. I'll draw those too so you can see. Just like this. Okay? Actually, they're just like a little U. I'm going to make some more of those. Not a lot, but just a few. With the tip of my brush, with a darker color. And that just gives it a little bit more, a little more texture. Okay? So I thought I'd have time to do another bird, but it doesn't look like I will. So I'm going to go back here and do some more details for you on the leaves. I'm mixing up my green, a little bit stronger green, and I can do some line work in the green if I want to for the veins. It's kind of fun to do. I can also make some darker leaves here. So I have a light leaf here and a dark leaf here and another light leaf. So that can happen pretty easily. Changing up the value, changing up the color a little. And you can work on that a little bit. Oops. A little bit stronger than I wanted to. So we want to really emphasize the lights and darks and think about the fact that we can layer things on top of previous washes. I'm just drawing with my brush just a little bit. Okay. I might want to add a little more detail on the flower, and that would just be dotting in maybe some darker color here for more texture in the center of the flower. Maybe accentuating some of these petals a little bit. Oops. Take that right out of there. Okay. So we have time for you all to show us some of your work if you'd like to, and Tom will get it organized so that we can see what you guys have been doing today. And I hope you'll join in again for classes that we have here at the Art Center. There's a lot going on, so check the website out. We're having a class in the fall for young people as well as adults in the fall that we're going to be offering, and you might be interested in joining in with a class like that. It'd be really fun. Okay, so there's my hummingbird. I could also make a little blue background if I wanted to. Got a little wild here with the flowers and the leaves, but it was really fun. And I could continue really working my way around this area here by adding more decorative elements to this. So I hope you had fun. I sure did, and we'd love to see what you've done today. So Tom's going to take over, and we can see what you've made today.
Okay, you guys need to turn on your microphones and talk at the same time that you're showing your picture. John, you can be first.
Well, here it is, and
Thank you very much. The wings got a little not delicate, but I enjoyed the flowers.
Good. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that's ready?
I'll show a birdie.
Okay, can you see that okay?
That's very pretty, very delicate. Wow, you
Beside
guys. Love the blue in that one.
There he is.
Very nice.
Oh, very delicate.
Julie, did you do one?
I did.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, I love that one. Very nice.
Here's mine.
Harper. Oh, wow. Harper, that's so pretty. Look at your flowers. Good job. Awesome. And there's Mary. Nice, Mary. And
I'm not seeing
Jenny.
those.
Wow, you guys are like experts at hummingbirds. Deb, nice. Ruby.
I don't see any of them.
You can't see them?
No.
Maybe Tom can tell you how to do that. How you can.
Oh, now I see one down there.
Are you
that's
in
good.
speaker view or the group view?
I'm in speaker view. Maybe I should be in gallery.
Yeah, you have to go up and get out of speaker view and go.
Oh, there I am. Okay, thank you.
And then
Oh, yeah.
talk, then we can see it.
And if you talk, usually we can see a full picture of you. Which this machine's not doing today for some reason.
Ruby, Deb. Oh,
I can show mine, Joan.
oh, hi, Joan. Yeah. Nice, Joan. Good to see you.
Thanks.
There's Joan. There's something right there. This is iPhone.
Oh, did you see me? Yeah.
Nice.
There's the iPhone person.
Okay, that's Joan. Good. And June, that's pretty. Very delicate colors. Anybody else? There's one.
Nancy,
Nice.
very
Nancy.
nice.
Nice, Nancy. There's one. June. Well, you guys, you did a wonderful job. It's lovely to see your work, and it's so nice to share the paintings that you do because, of course, we can see them here, but you guys can all share and see them. So that's very awesome.
That was
Thank you
super fun.
very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good. I
Thank
hope you
you.
had fun.
I did.
Good.
I did too.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Bye.
Come again.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.